Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today on Masech Shavuot daf Lamed, we are going to begin on the very top of Lamed Amud Aleph by the new Mishnah, also new Parak. Shavuot Eidus. When it comes to a Shavuot, which we'll see regarding testimony, so we'll understand exactly what that's referring to, but that's no heges b'nashim v'lo b'nashim. Now this is in contrast to the Mishnah we saw in yesterday's daf on Chav Tasim Beis regarding Shavuos Bitu and Shavuos Shav, that it applies more broadly. And Shavuos Eidus, because it's testimony related, it's only knowing b'nashim v'nashim, only men and not women, only people who are not related. Obviously, someone who is Posel Eidus, like, for example, someone who is a Gazlan, which is a Psul in a Torah, as the Pasuk says in Shmuel Saltashes Eid Chamos, Ve'enu nohegas el b'roin l'heyed b'fnei beistin, has to be someone who's fit, and we talked about maybe coming to exclude a king. B'fnei beistin, that's what we saw in Rashi in the previous Talmud. B'fnei beistin, shelo b'fnei beistin mepi atzmai. So it says Rashi, if you did it on your own, I don't know any testimony, then you're chayiv. And also, when it comes to mepiacherim, as Rashi says, come and swear regarding testimony. I don't know anything. But you didn't actually say the word shvua. Then you actually has to be done in Beistin, because you didn't actually make a shvuas saying you didn't know. As the pasuk in Vayikra says, "Himo yagid," but makom she'ilu hoyimagid hoyimoyel means it's only the place where you would speak and give testimony that would work. V'kram and the pasuk b'mushma p'yacherim ksiv p'atzmo yel v'rameir b'gzer shava, etc. That feel chutzul beistin. So if you do it yourself, that's even chutzul beistin. However, if it's mepiacherim in chayavin ad shichur behen bebeisin, the Rabbi Chacham Omer back in the Mishnah, ben mepiatmo ben mepiacherim in chayavin ad shichur behen bebeisin. No, even if it's mepiatmo, it's only in beistin. So that's where the bachlokas is. V'chayavin al zaden hashvua, and a person will be chayav a carbon oil b'yared, and b'mezid with regard to a shvuah, because shari nemer above and nelam v'al shkagasa im zadain ha'edus, and also b'shaygeg as well. Says Rashi, avol shaygegin heim al ha'karbon kishar shkagas bitoy, fine. But oimer yaduani sheshua zu asura, I knew that I wasn't allowed to make the shua, but any yodia shechavin like a carbon, which is like munbaz, as we saw previously. V'ashkagasa im zadan ha'edus. Ve'en chayavin al shkagasa, ve'en chayavin al shkagasa, says Rashi. Im shagigim him lagamri. If you're totally b'shogeg, because she'en yodim lo edus, I didn't know testimony. V'achach nizkru shahiyanusin hein, and then afterwards you remembered. That's not considered to be a lie if you totally never knew that you knew. So you're chayav a carbon oil v'yored. So as we saw, when it comes to Shavuos Bitui, there has to be this element of Yadua b'tchil b'soif and nelam. There's a forgetfulness in between when it comes, again, Thomas Mikdash Gadashov, as we learned elaborately in many dafim. Says the Gemara. So how do we know that one were apostle Eidos? The Tanabanan. The Yom Shnei Hanashim. So it says that the two men were standing. Be'edim HaKasim Adaber. We're talking about testimony. So Ato Eimer Be'edim Elo Babali Dinim. Maybe it's talking about they can't judge. Kashu Eimer Asher Lehem Hariv. There's a quarrel, Hari Bali Dinim Amr, that's referring to the judges. So what is that part? It's Be'edim Akas Madaber. So however, if that isn't satisfactory to you, then we have another pshat. The Im Nafshachlaimer Nemerkan Shane if it's Nemer Holan Shani Shnei Mal Holan Be'edim Afkan Be'edim. So at the very least we have a Xer Shava. So why would you maybe not like the first answer? The fact there's no vav, there's no vav achibor, so maybe it's really they're all talking about judges there too. It's also a judge. So nemer kan sheni v'nemer hon sheni mal hon be'edim av kan be'edim. Okay. Tanidach v'amdu shnei hanashim. So two people were there. That's men. So it's be'edim akas madaber. Ata oimer be'edim ho'en ho'el b'ba'idin ma'amrit v'chi shnayim boin l'din. When two people come to din, shloisha ein boin l'din. Three don't come to din. In other words, you need to have litigants. There could be three. There could be three judges, two or three witnesses, if you want. However, when it comes to judges, there's only you can't have a basin of two. What was wrong with the first answer? Maybe we're talking about two different parties. And it's totally different situations. Says Rashi, the im tirtzel hashiv tshuva al derech zu haruch hagzer shava. Okay. V'chitem says Rashi, but tavev nitva mishtoi krav. If you hein toivin rabim o nishboyin rabim, bedin echad, they're all coming to one case. Kol hatoivim karil hu kra chad. Each group is considered like one. So it's possible, again, this large group is really one. Okay. So therefore it's two. Okay. Avkan be'edim. Tani idach. V'amdu shnei hanashim be'edim. Akas madaber atoim be'edim oin oel b'bali dinim. So marta v'chi hanashim boin l'din. Nashim in bois l'din. So what does that mean? Women women have court cases also. Right? So obviously it has. What does that mean? So it must be it's talking about Adus. So malhon be'edim avkan be'edim again. Ma'im nafshachloimer. So v'chitem isha lav orcha mishim kokavod abas melch panima. So maybe, they sometimes go to din, but maybe they'll have someone represent them. So it's not necessarily such a proof. Because maybe women in general will not go. So never kan sheni and never hon sheni malhon edim av kan be'edim. Okay, Tanaban v'amdu. Now focus on the word v'amdu. They stood shnei hanashim. So we learn out from here mitzvah bali dinim shiamdu, that the bali dinim have to stand. So I want to make sure I said everything right. So when it said in the kasha because bali dinim, right? Like the bali dinim are the two parties in dispute, right? Not the beis din. There's no kasha. We're not asking can women be leaders of a beis din. The question is, how do we know when it says these two people came that they were Adim? Maybe we're talking that they were just the Bali Dinim, because we said maybe it's obviously. So what do you mean? Only men could be Bali Dinim? Women could be Bali Dinim. And the answer is, well, even though that's true, that's not necessarily a raya that it must be there for talking about witnesses, because the truth is maybe women, again, because of Kokavadu Vasmelch Benima, they don't. They may be able to have someone to represent them or something. Anyway, mitzvah bali dinin shiamdu. So the parties in the dispute have to stand. We'll see it the whole time. If they both want to sit, they both can sit. So ezu aser shelo yehi echad oimer ve'echad yoshev. Echad medaber kol tzarcha ve'echad oimer lo katzer devarcha. You have to basically treat everyone equally. You can't say one has to stay standing, the other one can sit down. One could speak as long as they want, one can't. That doesn't work. Everyone has to be treated equally, so they both could be represented the same. Tanaman. They're supposed to judge with favoritism, with not with favor, but tzedek with righteousness. As we said, one element is you can't have one of the balei dinin sitting and one standing. Echem daber kol tzarcha, v'echad omer lo katzin avarcha, same thing. Daber acher, but said it tishman mitecha, havidanis chavercha l'kav schos, which is very interesting. You have to judge them favorably. What does that mean? Says Rashi, v'lo bedin bali dinim akas medaber, ela boroya chavero, oisa davar shiata yochel hachri l'tzad avera, l'tzad schos, hachri l'schos, v'lo tachshaduhu ba'avera. This is just talking about in general. Besedek tishma demitecha. Very interesting. I'm not a judge, but it applies to everyone. That if you see something that you could look at it in one way or the other, good or bad, you should always look at it l'kav schos. It should be done as kol adam l'kav schos. And it's a healthy way of thinking as well, not always having a negative mindset. Tana Rav Yosef. Besedek tishma demitecha. Am shi'adcha b'toyre mitzvahs tishtadol l'doyne yafeh. Which apparently that's the right girsa. What does it say on the side of me here? Okay, so what does this mean? Says Rashi doesn't have anything. So the fact that it says "B'setash Am Yisecha," your nation, Am Itcha, the nation that's with you in Torah mitzvahs, Yishtadol Adoni Yafeh. Make sure to judge them properly. Okay, let's look at question 9. From why do we want from Tisha? So he said one shouldn't stand, one sit, one shouldn't let him speak so much, one not as much. Be done as your friend l'kav schos. Amitecha am she'itcha b'tarva mitzvos l'mishra b'tigra o b'shunda didaini. Okay, we didn't completely understand that. We'll have to get to the rest of. We'll have to get to the rest of that. In a second. Okay, so Rav Ula berei the Rav Eloi havili din kamei to Rav Nachman. So he had a din in front of Rav Nachman. Sholch Rav Yosef. He sent to Rav Yosef the following: Ula chavarenu, Ula our friend, amis b'Torah mitzvahs. He's laden in Torah mitzvahs. Amar lamai. So why do you? Lamai shalachli, why did you send me this? Says Rashi. Let's see. Why did you tell me that? So before we look at this Rashi, if you have two judges, two dinim come in front of you, one of them is a Talmud Chacham, havi poisik oiso techila, upater oiso mofanecha. You should basically have him go, and then he could go before you. So, is it to flatter him? So, why is that a good thing? So, Hadar Omer Lemishra Batigra. What does that mean? Says Rashi, Kedeprecious Im Badin Acher Lefanai Esak Et Zet Chila. That if there's other court cases, then you should basically let them go first because he's a Talmud Chacham. Alternatively, for Shuda Didaini. What is Shuda Didaini? It's a famous Machos Rashi and Taisus. So Yeshdin She'enu Toli B'Rayis Edem Lo B'Shvua Lo B'Mashalev Hadainim Noita Lo Schos Lo Chayiv. So sometimes there's no clear-cut answer. For example, in Gemara Ksuvas, Hahudi Armelhu Nexi Latuvia. I'm giving my stuff to a guy to my name Latuvia. Yosna Shtei Tuvia, and 2 Tuvias came. So who was supposed to give it to? So Rashi says, V'Armin Hasam Shuda Didaini. Lamisha Dain Roya Shehu Roya Lase Slomatana. Who would more logically be the Tuvia that would have been given as a gift? A total stranger, someone who is his best friend. Inami. L'Shtei Shtaros Shel Mecher. You have 2 documents. They're written on the same day. So who did he sell it to? Harin Shudadidaini. Afkan Kach Sholachli. Im Hadin Toli B'Shudadidaini. The case is a Shudadidaini case. Zeroyal Zechusu Shechacham. But Sadiku Shuda Loshen Hashlocha. Then you should look favorably toward him. It's a shtickle difficult. It sounds a little bit of Chanifus, as he asked, but that's the answer. Well, Perish Rabbeinu Tam, the far Shuda Didaini, as Rabbeinu Tam says, Lamishi Yirtza Hadayin Litain Yitain. Give it to whoever you want. Sarach Loimer the Hacha Haya Baldin should connect the Talmud Chacham that this guy was a Talmud Chacham Haya Yirashema Yitin Loi. Maybe you should give it to him because it says in Ksubas Talmud Chacham Koidim Gabi Nechse Latovia Lekach Shalach Le Shigam Zet Talmud Chacham V'Yaseh Shudale Shudid Daini. So it actually, again, if I have two tuvias who are strangers, one's a Talmud Chacham, a well-known scholar, and the other one is a nobody, so probably Shudid Daini, you probably want to give it to the guy who is a big tzaddik. Okay. So that is really the third answer. The im shiatcha b'tarvim mitzvos l'mishra b'tigra o l'shudid daini. So again, you should allow him to go, or again shudid daini as we just saw. So this is actually also question 9. So I'm going to mark this as also Lamed Amud Beis, and then we have TA. I think these questions are identical. Let's see, TA 24. Rav Ula Havile Dina Kamid Rav Nachman Shalchu Rav Yosef Ula Tavirenu Omis B'Tarba Mitzvahs. So my nafkamina. So this is Lamed Amud Aleph or Lamed Amud Beis. So Ola Misha B'Tigra Liv Cycle Tchila O L'Shuda Daini. Okay, so that's number 9, and also TA 24. We'll mark this here, TA 24, and I think same question. Hopefully, we'll get tonight the same question again. That'll be great. I have a big test tonight. Rav Ula Havi Leidina Kamid Rav Nachman, L'may Nachmina. Was Chayra I wrote Ladin Oisel Tchila. What is the whatever with Betigra? Okay, Mishra Betigra lives like Loi Tchila. I like to say it that way, or Beshuda Daini, which of course is correct. Lamed TB25. Okay. All right, let's continue. All right, so we learned so far that there is this notion of Sedek Tishma Damitecha. Amru Machlokes, the whole Machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim, which, what do we see? Who's Rabbi Yehuda and who are the Chachamim? So Rabbi Yehuda says, that they can actually both sit down. You just can't have one standing, one sitting. So the whole machlokus is babali dinim. Although the eidim they were called bamida. The actual eidim have to be standing. The whole machlokus is during the back and forth, if you will. Although b'shas gemar din they were called dayanim b'yeshiva or bali dinim bamida. Actually, when it's the verdict being said, then the Bali Dinim have to stand. Which is interesting. Of course, that's what we do in American court. We say, defendant, please rise. And that's what they do. They have to stand. It's like, why? Why do they have to stand during that time? It has to be because it's based on what happened in the Torah. There's a reason why as well. Must be why they're standing. Is like almost like they're Mikabel the Adis of the Gemar Din. Loshan Achar Machlokes B'Shas Matzah Matan. Of the B'Shas Gemar Din, they were called Dayanim B'Yeshiva. Again, the Dayanim can be sitting. Ubali Dinin Ba'amida. And the Bali Dinim are standing. The Ha'edim Kamar Dindam. This is mamash what it says here. The Edim is Kamar Dindamu. Exibhu, the Amdu Shnei Anoshim. So they're mamash like Edim at that time. It's a beautiful word. Question 10. Menolan de b'shas gemar din bali din b'amida. So, because it says either v'yashem moshe lishpat asam v'yamod ha'am, or they're like edim at gemar din, and it says v'amdu. Okay. Fine. The base of the Rav Huna. So the wife of Rav Huna, after Rav Huna died, Havile Dina Kamed Rav Nachman. So Rav Huna's widow went to din in front of Rav Nachman. Omer Heichinevid. What am I supposed to do? If I stand in front of her, mistatman taine sidabal dina, then I'm going to cause the Bali Dinim to basically shut down, because they're going to see that probably I'm showing great favoritism to the wife of Rav Huna. Lo okim, let's say I don't stand and come on in front of her, Eshes chaver hari chaver. It's an unbelievable word. The wife of a Talmid Chacham is like the Talmid Chacham himself. So, and that's because, as we can understand, because she supports him. Right? So it's an unbelievable word. The wife of a Talmid Chacham has to be respected as the Talmid Chacham himself. It's an unbelievable word. It's a beautiful, beautiful shot. Okay, so Armalei Lashame save Efrach Alai Bar Avza, go and get to me this bird, says Rashi, the Emoid, and stand up, V'lo Yavin Zeh Shibishvila Marati, that I was actually standing up for her, because there was some birds. Like, oh, I got to go get something. So, like, pretend that you're doing it something else. V'shadulai, and like throw it toward me, v'ikum, and then I'll need to stand up. So basically, throw something at me or whatever it is, and I'll have to stand up. Or I gotta like spill my drink or something. Like, oh my gosh, and I have to stand up. So therefore, people will think that I did it for that, and I'm still not going to show a lack of respect to Eishes Chaver. As we said, the whole machlokas is when you're back and forth. The Bali Dinim have to be standing. The Yosef Kaman, Dishari Mitsanoi, one who sits, it looks like the person is untying. It's like you're untying your shoes, like you're leaning over in a seat. So, let's see. Says Rashi, B'yeshiva v'habola chalid kavod hechi avod dikayim. 1 second. Okay. The omer ish ploni ata zakoi, ish ploni ata chayev. So again, the problem is that you're going to look at what one person is being showing favoritism. Amar Rabbi Bar Rav Huna, Hai Sumar Rabbanan B'Ma'aretz, the Isul Hu Dina B'Hadi Adadi. So you have to show respect to a Talmid Chacham, but what do you do when he comes to a court case with an Amaretz? So Mosvinanli Sumar Rabbanan, we allow the Sumar Rabbanan to sit down. Amaretz Nami Amrinan Leitiv. We can tell the Amaretz you should also sit down, even though again we want them both to stand. But since it's a Talmid Chacham, a Subra Murabanan, so therefore we have him sit. And therefore we allow the Amaretz to sit too, otherwise it looks like we're showing favoritism. The E Koi, and if the Amaretz decides to stand standing, it's not a problem. That's his choice. Rabbar Sharavia Havile Dina Kamed Rab Papa. Oisve, he sat down. Oisav Namu Labal Dine, and he also sat down. Also Shlicha the Beidina. The Shliach the Beis Din came, and Batash Bey, and he, as I says, he like kicked him for sitting down, for sitting down. Vokmil al Ma'aretz, and he got up. Voy Armil Rab Papa, he didn't tell him, Tiv, sit down. So Heichid Abidachi Vaha Mistatmin Tanise, you're going to close down his tainas. Like, why would you allow this to happen? You should have told him to sit back down. You can sit down. Don't worry. The shliach made a mistake. So my papa, because people say, Ihu, the judge, ha'aisvan shlichahu, dulo mafayis minoi. So, what would happen? That the clerk of the court, lo asisa lo taiva, the eno ohayvai. So we'll say that that basically he appointed a shliach that does not do good and does not like me. Okay. B'yom Rabba bar Rav Huna Hai Simur Rabbanan Vam Arts Yisva Hudina Bahadi Adadi Lo Likum Simur Rabbanan V'Lesiv. Don't let him get there and sit down. Mishum Nemixi Command Sadile Ladine. Because it looks like, again, everything was all being prepared. It says Rashi Lefnei Hadayin Kodim Shavu Baldin if he Yoshev B'Shaisik. Even if he sits and is quiet, because it looks like everything was already set for him. Says Rashi, Tainase Vigarim Sheikh Shaduhu B'mitin Devarim L'dayin V'Over Below Sisa Shmeya Shov V'Lomran El Wadolo Kivei Le Idne. That's only if he doesn't have a set time to learn with him. Kivei Le Idne Leison Ba, if the Sumer Rabbanan has a time that he typically learns with this guy, so then he's able to do this. Meimer Aimer B'Idne, in the time where he's set time for learning, Torrid, he's probably just busy. Voimer, he's Torrid, therefore it's not necessarily because he's going to show him any favoritism, so it's not a problem. The Yomi bar Rav Huna, Haisim Rabbanan the Yoda B'Sadusa, if the Talmud Chacham knows testimony, V'Zil Bel Milsel Lemezel Beidina the Zurtumine, V'Sahudi Kamei Lo Lezel. So if the court is one which is below him, a very non-dignified court, then he doesn't have to go and testify. It's not necessary for him to do that. Okay. However, Rav Shish Rav Idi Afanami Tinina, we also find this when it comes to Shavuos Aveda. Matzah sak or kupa. Let's say he finds a sack or a box. In darcha wheat oil, it's not something which he would typically pick. It's an embarrassment. It's not something he'd walk around with. Harazel yitol, he doesn't have to touch it, because as the Rashi quotes the famous Gemara, "V'salamta mehem pamim shat mesalim." Sometimes you could close your eyes, like a kohen b'beis kvaris. He doesn't have to go into matam himself, or again, Talmud Chacham, it's not lefi kvoidai, so he's allowed to turn a blind eye. So too, a Sumer Rabbanan doesn't have to go and testify in a lowly basin. But it depends. When it comes to an Isser, then he has to. Because even though he's a Talmud Chacham, in comparison to Hashem, you have to follow the mitzvahs. And that's what we learn, as the Gemara in the third parak in Brachos says, and this could even not just by mitzvahs d'Rabbanan, maybe even certain mitzvahs d'Oraisa. Kol makom sheish b'chil Hashem in the Chacham Kavod Rab. Rabbi Yemer Havi Yada Le Sehudasa Lamar Zutra. So Rabbi Yemer knew testimony to Mar Zutra. Also going down Meimar, he went in front of Rabbi Meimar. Osvinhu Lukuhu, and they're all sitting down. Amalei Ravashi La Meimar Yemer Uma Machlokas B'Vaydinim. Of Adam Eba Kol B'Amida. Why are you sitting him down? Everyone's supposed to be standing. Amalei Hi Asay V'Hai Asay. I said it covered Torah Adif. So you're right. It really is important of the obligation to stand. But there's also another mitzvah say, which is Es Hashem Lokecha Tira, and the fact that it says Es, as the Gemara in Baba Kama tells us, is a tafel to Hashem, which is a Talmud Chacham. And therefore, even though it's true, they're supposed to stand, but also I'm supposed to show covet to a Talmud Chacham, and that's more important. Why is that I say more important than the other one? It's a good question, but that's what he says. Simin Senigroin Borg Zelos Mirma. Talking about Manayin Ladayin Shoyase Senigroin Ledavarev. Person should not get defensive, says Rashi. The parish on the side, rather, is a melitz, like a melitz yosher. Kamod diat ami ein kategar nasa senegar. So that's what it means. Senegar is like a defendant Ledavarev, which means, as Rashi says, im dun din, if you judged, the libo nukva, yiloimer shehu toya, you kind of know you made a mistake. Lo yaksa devar l'havi raya is l'hamidam shu boish laksor. You kind of like want to double down and act like your psak was correct. El chol stadim yaksel heitzi din lamitoy. The truth is, if you made a mistake, own up to your mistake. Instead of defending your mistake, that's wrong. Talmud Leimer b'davar sheker tirchak. you should distance yourself from a lie, because otherwise you want to cover up on a lie, you're just going to keep piling it on. That a dayan shouldn't have a Talmud bor to be involved. He was a non-scholarly student who perhaps shouldn't even be your student. He shouldn't be around you during this whole thing. Because who knows, he may be whispering things in your ear which are just mistakes. Let's say a judge knows that this guy's a thief. You have a witness. He knows his friend is a thief. How do you know you shouldn't combine with him, even if, let's say, his testimony is true? How do you know if there's a form of trickery? Says Rashi, you kind of were able to figure out their testimony is not true. The judge didn't say I will decide via koilar totally but saber edim, and let it the chains of the sin be on their head. In other words, even you know that the Edom are wrong in theory, but maybe you say, you know what, I'm still going to side with them, and if they get caught, it'll be on them. It's not going to be my fault to say, well, it was based on the testimony I made this decision. So based on midvar sheker tirchak, you should not do that either. Okay, that's it for the regular test. Question TB26. Didn't do that yet either. TA25. Adkan.